New Orleans, southern jewel at the mouth of the Mississippi. It has always been a unique American city. Settled by the Spanish, refined by the French, and built on the backs of African, Indian, and Irish immigrants. It is a city older than the country itself, once America's second richest, progressive and pulsating, once a place where different cultures and races mixed together to inspire the genius of Louis Armstrong, Tennessee Williams, and Edward Degas. And it has always been, like no other place in the world, a city dedicated to the celebration of life. It is hard to say what New Orleans will now become, but before the storm, there was also another New Orleans. Behind the Harlequin's mask was a city that time had left behind, a place where a plantation mentality still ruled the politics, and the masses still served at the interests of landowners and business barons. It was a place where old wealth was passed down within established families, as it had been for generations. Within the past few decades, however, the political power of the city had shifted. As whites moved out of the city into the suburbs, in part to escape forced school integration and rising crime, the political power swung to the city's almost 70% African-American populace. New Orleans had a clear race-class divide, with an impoverished black majority fighting to wrestle a piece of the pie from a controlling white minority, and an entrenched white minority struggling to hold on to a city they felt was rightfully theirs. This is the setting of our story.
Early Monday morning, Katrina, her teeth bared, gnawed her way through the Gulf Coast.
Less than 24 hours after the storm hit land, the levees gave way, and the sea rampaged into a city built an average of 9 feet below sea level.
Let us check out, hold on.
Almost the entire population of New Orleans was displaced, over 500,000 people. Among them, some 65,000 public school children.
We got guys out here, shooting at the police. Like I said, raping kids and women.
Just the number of people dead is going to be worse, and we're not going to.
Angry Governor Blanco proclaimed the obvious, that the crisis brought out the worst in people. Others across the nation, in bewilderment, would ask, how could such an instantaneous and widespread disintegration of social order have occurred? How could a hurricane have thrown so many of us so quickly into such lawlessness and frenzy? Many in New Orleans could have answered. They knew it was just a matter of time before it would have happened anyway.
I just think the school, they just cheated us. Like, they didn't really prepare us for like everyday life.
January 2003. Two candidates campaigned to be hired as the New Orleans Superintendent of Schools. Andre Hornsby, former Superintendent of Schools in Houston, Texas and Yonkers, New York, and Anthony Amato, former Superintendent of Schools in New York City and Hartford, Connecticut.
I lived in a single-room occupancy. My mom and I had one room. TV screen about this big, 9 inches, black and white, and I used to watch Leave It to Beaver. And I'm watching this and I'm saying, what's wrong with this picture? I was in a room, the bathroom was down the hallway, all types of people lived in the other 8 rooms, and I'm watching Leave It to excuse me. I'm really angry about this. I have an internal anger about I'm watching this on this little screen, and I'm saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my mom who's working 12 to 15 hours in a factory, and we had welfare to boot to keep us going? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with it was America. America never took yours truly or anybody else and said, you know, you don't have this skill, we're going to teach you this skill. We're going to formally put it into our curriculum to make sure you can be just as much a Leave It to Beaver as you want to be or not be. But at least you have the skill set to do it. It's not genetic. It's got to be taught formally, and every child in America has the ability to learn it.
Louisiana is the poorest state in the nation. 29% of its children live in poverty. In New Orleans, where the two candidates are applying, the figure is an even more staggering, 40%. Both applicants are aware of the tie between poverty and poor education. And not surprisingly, public education in New Orleans ranks as one of the worst in the nation. One recent high school valedictorian, the top student in her entire school, could not pass a national high school exit exam written to a 10th grade level. Amato calls the situation pathetic. Both candidates are also aware of the tie between poor education and crime. Hornsby, a native of Louisiana, was born into a state that keeps a higher percentage of its inhabitants in jail than any other state in the nation. And with such poor graduation rates in New Orleans, it is not surprising that New Orleans leads the state, thus giving New Orleans the highest incarceration rate in the industrialized world.
Well, everybody looks at urban dropout rates from two perspectives. You either look at the perspective of year by year, how many kids started the year and how many kids ended the year, and you could call that your dropout rate. Or the real way to do this is to create a summative assessment from the 9th grade incoming class to the 12th grade outgoing class. And when we finally did it the right way, we had a dropout rate of over 70% in New Orleans. Can that 70% of your kids don't make it to the final goal line? And then you realize, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yet despite the disastrous state of the educational system, the poverty, and the crime, this is the world where the two candidates feel they can make a difference. And their similar qualifications and vision have propelled them to stand nose to nose at the final school board selection vote.
In a city that is predominantly made up of African American students and a board that is predominantly African American, what will it say to the rest of the country if he cannot get a job as a superintendent in a city like this? Then what is the hope for other African American children to lead school systems in this country?
I cast my vote for Mr. Anthony Amato.
I would vote for Anthony Amato based on his record of achievement, both in New York City and in the city of Hartford, Connecticut.
My vote is in support of Dr. Hornsby. He has led a school district twice the size of Orleans Parish.
We don't want the national reputation we have right now. Our national reputation has to be rooted in turnaround. With that, Madam President, I reiterate my vote for Anthony Amato.
Dr. Willard.
When you can find one who possesses, one who relates, one who resembles, one who comes from the same culture, background, endurance, suffering, you have the better candidate in this case. All I want to say is, Andre Hornsby is a little greater than the rest of the batch. There's a good flock out there, a great flock out there, but there's one that sparkles a little more. Lord, I hope this board would see it. Amen. Hornsby! Hornsby! Hornsby!
Mr. Sims, thank you. So I'm looking for, and have said that, a change agent, a reformist. And I think that I found that person personally myself. I'm looking at the experience of the leader, an experience of an educator, person who is a Harvard training specialist. I cast my vote for Anthony Amata.
Despite the close vote, by most, Amata was heralded as, quote, our last hope, end quote. For the first time in 15 years, we have a true educator instead of a political appointee, says school board member Jimmy Fahrenholtz. At a contract meeting with teachers, for the first time in memory, the superintendent showed up and received a standing ovation. The business community also applauds the choice. And since a 2005 survey found that poor public education was the #1 reason why new businesses were unwilling to come to Louisiana, they were depending on him.
I don't care how many people you're connected to, how much, business acumen you have, you are not going to be able to convince a company of any size to come here if you can't correct your education system. These people are not going to take kindly to having to pay to educate their children when they're coming from a place where the free education is better than your paid education. Not going to happen.
We're not educating the children of New Orleans. We're not creating the workforce of the future. And you know what? New Orleans matters to me as a Baton Rougean because New Orleans is a vital part, or perhaps the vital part, of what makes Louisiana's economy move. And when New Orleans' school system fails, the next step is that New Orleans fails. And when New Orleans fails, Louisiana fails. And that is not what I want to see happen.
Amato is one last hope. One last hope in a state being economically strangled by its public education system. One last hope for a city that has anointed then spit out 6 superintendents in the previous 8 years.
For all of us, it's a new day and a new way because students are first. Thank you.
Schools in Orleans Parish are some of the most challenged facilities I've ever seen in my life. In fact, I would say they're the worst facilities in America today.
Frankly, no other term to use, it's just a grand mess.
Everything from rape to ordinary fights.
The teacher was punched in the head today, taken away from a middle school in an ambulance.
If somebody blindfolded you and turned you around 3 times and you walked in some of these schools, you would not know that you were not in a third world, undeveloped country. Right here, right now, as we speak.
In September 2004, we set out to see the schools for ourselves, to see how bad they really were, to see how an entire state economy could be held ransom by a public school system, and to investigate how over $7,000 per student of taxpayer money, an amount higher than the cost of most private schools in the area, could be squandered with such little impact on the lives of children. We sent a proposal to school administration spokesperson Pat Bowers and legal counsel Regina Bartholomew, asking for access to film in the schools. We were verbally assured that permission would be forthcoming. For 4 months, we called and emailed to follow up on our request. For 4 months, we waited. No formal written response came. Denied access, we decided instead to focus on 3 students attending the New Orleans public schools, Mario, Jonathan, and Joshua, and to get our story indirectly.
Mario Pleasant, very handsome. I don't talk much. John Mack, Much love.
My mother, she was having some problems. Like she would never be at home a lot and just leave me and my brother inside. And I guess she ran with a crowd of certain people. Like she probably forgot about her responsibilities to us as our mother. So I guess
she was on drugs or whatever, but that was like, it wasn't really no biggie, but we just were never together. We stayed with our dad like most of our years. Yeah, until he went to jail, he was incarcerated. And from 9 to 12, we were just on our own.
And my father went to jail. And so, like, we was just in the house again by ourselves.
My grandmother's incarcerated, you know. She been in jail since I was about 2. You know, she had life, so she went in there off a drug charge and a temporary police officer charge.
And we used to tap dance to have money or whatever, yeah. And that's how we paid majority of the bills. Well, the apartment we stayed in was free water, and we paid electricity and the rent. And the rent was like, since we knew the landlord or the person over the apartment building, he was nice to us because he knew our dad was away, so he like cut the rent down or whatever, and he helped us out a lot of stuff. We tried the drug thing, like we tried selling drugs. We just did it because like everybody else was doing it. We didn't really have like no one telling us not to. And our dad was always a positive role model, but like with him not around, and we just me and my brother, so we just did what we had to do.
Drugs, alcohol, like I said, I grew up in the city, right? I dropped out of school like maybe in the 10th grade. I've been to jail once or twice just by hanging with the wrong crowd. It was like a little cycle. I said, well, it has to stop somewhere, you know, so I said, you know, it might as well stop with me, where it can go on a little farther.
The promised official permission for access to the schools never came. But finally, we caught up with school district legal counsel, Regina Bartholomew, at a school board meeting.
I called the state. I said, well, let me see what their perspective is. We don't recommend that any school district do that. I haven't had a chance to confirm it in writing, but I will. And then the bad light that it was shined, even if it's true, you thought your depiction was just a bit harsh.
Why do you think the New Orleans administration is opposed to us going into the school?
I have absolutely no idea, except that they consistently are at the bottom of all these lists, and they must think that there's something to hide, but what can you hide? I mean, I think the publicity is out there. We know there are umpteen problems. Why wouldn't you want the world to know what's going on and to get help?
We have to have a way to make sure they're doing a good job. How can we do that when you don't have accountability, when you don't have transparency? This is one of the things that we did in Uganda. We did a little project in Uganda. They had a huge problem. 80% of the money that was being budgeted at the national level wasn't getting to the local schools. We started publishing the local budget. We took the budget that came down to the local school and we published it in the local paper. So every parent in that district knew exactly how much was supposed to be going to that school. All of a sudden now you have 90% of the money being spent in the school. You literally wiped out corruption by that simple act of publishing how much should be going to this school and where it was going. So if you don't have accountability and transparency, you have corruption. And as you know from looking at the recent newspaper headlines, there's a federal probe. The federal government said this is the worst school district in the United States.
We announced jointly today the filing of 3 separate bills of information charging a total of 10 individuals with federal felonies involving fraud and kickbacks in the Orleans Parish school system.
One of the accused, a payroll clerk, admitted to writing herself checks for over $250,000. She thought she would evade detection by making the checks out to herself in her maiden name rather than her married name. Another of the accused, Carl Coleman, the manager in charge of buying health insurance for the district, was charged with extortion. He spent $50 million of the district's money per year while demanding kickbacks from those with whom he did business.
Mr. Coleman, as I'm sure you've read in the paper, admitted that he had received kickback monies from a number of insurance brokers. there were brokers on both sides of this deal who were among those he named, meaning from Cigna and Coventry. It would be reasonable for someone to make $250,000 to $300,000 to be the broker consultant on the health insurance. That'd be, anyone who got that contract would be happy at $250,000 to $300,000. There were $1 million being paid on the health insurance that I know of to brokers by Coventry Health. A number of carriers had stopped bidding competitively on school board business because the feeling from them was the process was so corrupt that what's the point?
You're not stealing from an organization, you're stealing from our kids. And if you don't understand that, for anyone out there thinking that you're going to continue to do this, or even contemplating doing this in the future, please do me a favor first. I want you to drop by your local school. I want you to ask the principal to bring you into a kindergarten class. I want you to look into the face of a kindergarten child and then decide if you're going to rob that kid of his or her educational future. Then make your decision, because that's the real victim. And if you should happen to make the wrong decision, I want you to know we're going to get after you, we're going to pursue you, and we're going to convict you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new day and a new way in the New Orleans public school system.
When Amato forces all employees to show up in person and present identification in order to collect their paychecks, 1,500 checks are left unclaimed. Amato calls the ploy Operation Ghostbusters. School board member Jimmy Fahrenholtz intones, "In Louisiana, we don't mind dead people voting, but we don't like them stealing our money." There are rumors that the pillaging leads all the way up to the school board and possibly beyond. The New Orleans School Board, 7 elected citizens who reign over the New Orleans public schools. The board is independent of the mayor, city government, and state government. They're responsible only to the voters who elect them. This is the group that Amato has pledged to work with. And initially, all seems to go well. Indeed, Amato's first performance evaluation reflects this sense of teamwork and shared vision.
I'm pleased to report that overall, the board found that based upon the performance objectives set forth in the superintendent's contract, that he has met or exceeded all of the expectations of those performance objectives.
But despite Amato's initial optimism on working harmoniously with the board, the system in New Orleans is set up to spawn more collision than cohesion. The school board holds the power to hire and fire employees as they see fit, and the power to dole out contracts from their $566 million budget. The board holds this power, not Amato, though Amato will be held responsible for the outcomes of all of their decisions.
In other words, we want to know everybody who is hired, when they were hired, what their salaries are for every department. I need not tell you this, but everybody knows you can't hire anybody unless the board approves them.
If you ever watch him at a board meeting, I used to tease him that he was going into the zone. Watch him at a board meeting when people are behaving badly, his eyes turn, and you can tell he's in another place.
Amato refuses to engage, but despite the controlled countenance, the message comes clear. He is bracing for a fight with the school board, and it will take every bit of strength his Bronx upbringing has given him.
The roofing contract. We looked at the roofing contract, the dental insurance coverage, same broker as on the life insurance, Angelic Asset Management. There was a dental network being used that he owned a piece of, and he was getting a piece of every claim that got paid that the district didn't know anything about. Someone tell me his expertise, other than the fact that he is friends with former Mayor Mark Morial and was the primary fundraiser for Ms. Sims.
Where every time we turned over, or opened up another door, or turned over a leaf, we found yet another service that could have been done at a much, much cheaper rate.
Janitorial, AME. The schools were not being cleaned. The employees were screaming about AME. Other people were screaming about AME. And there was clear protection of AME by Ms. Sims. We later found out, or during the process, Ms. Sims' son-in-law works for AME.
Why would Stuart Pilch say that you wanted AME because your son-in-law worked for AME?
Because he was trying to discredit me.
And what was his reason for discrediting you?
Retaliation.
for...
firing him. He would fall in the category of a disgruntled employee.
Congressman Jefferson's brother came into the district and told employees that they had to give him some insurance business because Elenise and his brother, the congressman, had worked it out. He said that to employees.
Did any politicians, Jefferson or Jordan or any politicians, ever contact you regarding board issues?
No, absolutely not.
I received a number of threats, anonymous calls, letters, etc., that basically indicated in no uncertain terms that I should not continue along this road. But you never react to these things in the sense of backing off. You back off once, you're done. You're done, you will never stop backing off because now people understand exactly what they have to target.
Some of the things have been presented to me, and I've been in this business for 30 years, I just can't believe it was occurring.
So I met a particular senior, and he says, I have a situation. My teacher, who's my personal tutor, came to me and said, how much would you give me to pass the course? And I said, excuse me? He says, yeah. She actually wanted me to pay her money to give me a grade so I can pass her tutorial to graduate. And I have to tell you, it shattered me. I got to the point of no return. I couldn't take that. A teacher with a kid. That was my worst day.
The situation was so egregious that Amato asked the FBI to take the unprecedented step of setting up an FBI anti-corruption office inside the school administration building.
I felt that the only way to make headway in this would be to bring in outside agents, so to speak, people outside of New Orleans and outside of Louisiana. My driver was well armed. He was a former professional police officer, and he would constantly tell me, guide me in certain ways in terms of keeping us both safe. My wife repeatedly said, I say goodbye to you every morning, and I just never know if you're going to come back at night.
While Amato was becoming concerned for his physical survival, students of the New Orleans public schools were also worried about academic survival. Instituted in 2000 to ensure that students nationwide receive a similar basic level of education, the LEAP test is given in the 4th, 8th, and 10th grades. Students must pass in order to progress to the next grade. The LEAP test is anathema in New Orleans. Students just cannot pass. Between 2000 and 2003, 4th graders showed some improvement in test scores, but still almost half failed. 8th grade results were not so encouraging, and failure rates remained above 60%. During their last 3 years of high school, students have 6 chances to pass the final LEAP test. Failure means they do not graduate. Going into his senior year, Mario has already failed the test 4 times.
I just think of it as another test. I used to think of it as the test of all tests, and I get nervous, but I just sit there and be like, I gotta take the test. I gotta keep doing till I pass. That's it.
Mario, he's scared. Like he don't know if he want to pay. He don't think he gonna pass him. He nervous.
I'm not gonna kill myself with a LEAP test because I never pass it. If I don't pass it this time, I'm gonna pass it in March.
I don't really plan have no intentions on going to the NBA or anything. I just wanna go to college, and try to get a scholarship to a college, so I won't have to pay buku money because I don't really have a lot of money.
Well, I was looking into playing football, but at me, being the height I am and the weight, it's probably gonna be impossible for me to play a linebacker spot. And I just guess I go to the Marines because I could accomplish some of the things that I won't accomplish before I just give up.
For us, our age, somebody 18, a black male that's 18 looking for a job, right? Get an entry-level position as a dishwasher or something. then try to work up to kitchen manager or something.
I think I'm gonna have a nice future, me. But I already know it ain't gonna turn out how everybody else is turning out, feel me? I ain't gonna die in the streets or die in the penitentiary, you hear me?
He was an older brother, you know. He always chastised me, like, you know. He ever saw me crying, he wouldn't pick me up, he wouldn't babyfy me. He like, man, shut up, Carl, you know. You're a man, you know. He was like my father. He had a set of twins, he had 3 little girls. I miss my bro. Like, kinda hard, you know. They said it was a shootout. I don't know. They just found him face down with under a sawed-off shotgun, you know. Damn.
He went to a game, and he came back from the game, and he worked at Popeyes, and his co-worker was bringing him some chicken, you know, and he came outside to wait for his co-worker. And I heard 5 shots. And I was like, I told my husband, I said, you heard that? And he said, Linda, that's Mario. Mario got shot. And I ran, and I looked, and he said, Ma, am I gonna graduate? I said, yeah, Mario. He said, Ma, am I gonna die?
The situation in New Orleans is such that "Thou shalt not kill" signs are posted around the city, with a "not" underlined, as if to remind those who may have misread the commandment. In a recent police experiment, 700 gunshots were fired at random throughout the city. Not a single complaint was called in.
If that student has no rules at home or whatever environment he's coming from, he's going to have no discipline within the school. We had the largest contingent of commissioned personnel of any school district in the nation.
Lindy Abeles Scholes, whose son was murdered on the streets of New Orleans, founded a program called Get Real About Violence, designed to help kids find nonviolent ways to resolve their problems, to help kids learn to deal with life as it is in the Ninth Ward. The program is set up at Carver High School, a school that logs between 5 and 10 violent episodes per day. December 2004, Randolph Spencer, the new principal sent into control John McDonough High School, stated that he took over after a riot involving 500 to 600 students erupted just outside of school grounds. January 2005, just a month later, 11 students are involved in a brawl at the high school. 2 of the involved girls attack a security guard who is trying to break up the fight. They are pepper sprayed and arrested along with 9 other students. 2 years earlier at John Mack, 3 teens entered a crowded gymnasium with automatic weapons, murdered 1 student, and wounded 3 others.
15-year-old student Jonathan Anthony Williams is the fatal target. 3 other female students between ages 15 and 16 are wounded in the hail of bullets from an AK-47 assault rifle.
Schools should absolutely be safe havens, and what you witnessed today is something that has occurred, unfortunately, across America.
The students have a no-fear attitude. You know, the student coming from the housing development area, it's just a struggle for them to live every day. So whatever an administrator can deal out as discipline, you know, that means nothing. That means nothing to them.
Like a lot of girls, they be having knives and they be having pepper spray, and a lot of the young men, they have like buku automatic weapons, and like they feel like they need like protection because they feel like if the enemy got like someone who they have a problem with have a weapon, they need to get one too, because the person probably trying to kill them, out to kill them, so they feel for protection mostly. I see like 80-85% of the kids have guns.
March 2005, a turf war escalates into a riot involving 24 students at O. Perry Walker High School. 1 student is shot. Luckily, no one dies. 3 weeks later, the outcome is crueler as a student is shot just outside of Alfred Lawless High School and ends up paralyzed for life.
It's just everywhere. It's not just here. It's at other schools and other communities, everywhere.
I don't know what to think in the morning when I get up. So should I go to school or not?
First shot, I can't feel where it's going at. And it's just hot. It's real hot. And I'm crawling to the side next door. And he just keep on shooting like I can see him falling away. And I'm screaming like, help, please. I'm shot. Somebody help me, please. I'm crying, I'm sweating. So I said, I got two reasons. I sit in, I bleed. I find strength to get up and walk next door to my house and find some help. So God gave me strength off the top. So I got up and I kind of like, to my house, and I fell on my porch. I think because it was in a pool of blood, I'm like, man, what is this? And I'm crying, I'm telling I'm crying, screaming, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. I can't leave like this. They said it was 3 times in my hand, and 2 times under my arm, and 1 came out, and 1 still in. You can still see the bullet.
He don't know why he got shot, because he wasn't about that. It was about drugs, and he wasn't about that.
You get robbed and killed because a dope fiend don't have no money to supply his habit. So I don't want to retaliate because, it makes no sense. It's not going to change nothing if I retaliate. It wasn't my time to go, I can tell you that. He sent me back, God sent me back. It wasn't my time. It was time for me to leave. I'm still here, I'm breathing. I can go back to school whenever I want to, and I'm going back.
It's most unfortunate that at least a designee representing the superintendent is not here. There could be legitimate reason for him, but certainly someone should be here to represent administration. I'm really disturbed over that one.
You cannot achieve credibility with constant errors that are repeated over time. And if there is an issue of credibility with the board, everyone sitting up here takes responsibility for that, including you, Mrs. Anderson.
What's wrong with Orleans? And that's the way the rest of the state feels. They just shake their head and say, we've tried everything we know, and we don't know what to do next.
Stepping into the controversy, clearly on Amato's side, state legislators introduce Act 193. The act proposes to strip the school board of their power to hire and fire personnel and their power to grant contracts. Instead, the bill would cede the power to Amato. The school board and community are enraged, and together they file suit to stop the bill.
So what happens is now, instead of contracts having to go before 7 people for approval, it only goes before 1. So whereas you may have had to grease 7 palms before, you only have to grease 1. You don't ever give any one individual that much power and authority over public money with no checks and balances.
About the same time, in an effort to hold on to power, 4 school board members reportedly meet in secret and conspire to fire Amato. Such a closed meeting is illegal in Louisiana. The state's Sunshine Law mandates that all governmental meetings be open to the public. It was created to stem rampant corruption in just this type of secretive action. But now, the stakes are high. The race-class divide is at stake. Control of a $500 million budget is at stake. Power is at stake. The Times-Picayune, labeling the 4 involved board members the Gang of 4, picks up the scent and accuses them of convening illegally in a front-page editorial. They make the slanted accusation despite any proof and despite the denials of all involved school board members.
At no time did you discuss in this meeting terminating Dr. Amato's job?
No. At no time that was discussed.
There was no person that they could get to verify it because it didn't happen.
Was Dr. Amato's performance ever discussed at the meeting?
No, absolutely not.
Was his name even brought up?
Nope, not at all.
Was the superintendent's performance discussed in the meeting?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
We called several times and sent several requests to interview the Times-Picayune editors responsible for the article, but received no response.
The Times-Picayune, the editorial writing body, was opposed to mixing the races. The Times-Picayune has always had a racist bias slant when it has come to the public school system, so I don't expect anything different now.
The Times-Picayune, the monopolistic newspaper of New Orleans, acts as unchallenged judge and jury. However, with the school board election just around the corner and negative publicity mounting, an angry public seems intent on acting as executioner. They are fed up with the bickering and ineffectiveness displayed by the current school board.
Most blacks that I have talked to have been very dissatisfied with the present school board.
I think it's a strong consensus in the community that they're out of touch and they're mismanaging and not really keeping their eye on their purpose, which is to serve the children.
African-American Times-Picayune columnist Lolis Eric Ellie writes, "Look at the way the New Orleans Parish School Board has failed this community. Can there be any doubt that black politicians have failed to deliver on their promise to provide quality leadership?"
It all goes on under the table. And the way it goes on, to me, I think some school board members might be under the table also.
An Erase the Board campaign springs to life. Its goal is to unseat 5 of the 7 school board members.
There was also the cry, erase the board. What it really was code for was erase the blackboard. And so we will bring back the 2 people who have contributed the least to the system.
I'm running because I'm disheartened by the failures in our public school system.
Check the nuns out that taught me. Check the coaches out, the speech teacher that had me. You know, check all of those people. What kind of boy was he? Check out my criminal record. Check all the bad things. And if a guy checks out all right, or a lady with our board checks out all right, you got to give that lady a passing grade. All right?
Why does somebody want to run for an $800 a month expense if you had no previous background in education? None whatsoever. Never had anything to do with children, but all of a sudden the children are the most important thing. Why? Why?
So if you're dealing with a company that has a possible ethics violation, why are you continuing to do business with them? Those are questions that I don't see our school board asking.
This school district is about 97% African American, mostly poor. What's your motivation? I've been black for 65 years. These are my children. What's your motivation? What are you looking for?
This is a reference to the common belief that whites just want to control the $566 million budget and the contracts that go along with it.
And some would argue, can black people manage that money? You know, should we have black people over that kind of money?
So you're gonna vote for Miss Landry?
All the way, 100%.
Why Miss Landry?
Because she's the lady, that's the person. She's the one to be up there.
What is she running for?
School Board District 5.
As the election draws near, current board members struggle to hold on against a determined and well-financed group of challengers. An average of $75,000 per candidate will be spent on the upcoming contest.
They are desperately trying to overthrow Willis.
Help is on the way. Every day that they don't get an education, they become closer and closer to living a life of poverty or crime.
We are publicly fighting. We don't need that.
I have a council person who has established her own opponent against me. Maybe she doesn't like me. Frankly, I think she's racist.
And when the results are tallied, victory. It's a clean sweep for Amato. The board has been erased. The blackboard.
Board President Cheryl Mills is out. Also out, board member Alanis Brooks Sims. Brooks Sims and Dr. Mills had to become staunch opponents of Superintendent Anthony Amato.
In my opinion, it's time to move forward. It's time to move forward in every sense of the word.
Jimmy Fahrenholtz, an Amato supporter, along with Una Anderson, were both easily re-elected. Fahrenholtz says voters had a very detailed message for defeated board members.
They knew the truth of the matter, and they said that the superintendent is who we want to run the school system. I would appreciate it if you'd leave now.
Hope is palpable. Adding to the feeling is the fact that Act 193 has passed and been signed into law, finally giving the power to hire and fire and grant contracts to the ever-popular Amato. Change is in the air. Riding high on a wave of optimism and positive public sentiment, Amato, along with the 7 new board members, are now referred to as the Gang of 8. Together, they will overcome and achieve.
As the New Orleans new board members, congratulations.
You have to admit it's very unusual to have a governor, a senator, lieutenant governor, city council, legislators, business leaders. You must be special people.
But even in the midst of all the excitement and enthusiasm, the vigilant public remains unimpressed.
But I just have one question. Pursuant to a public records request, another very important law that I did last week, I have in my hand several invoices on what this dog and pony show is costing the citizens. I total over $12,000, but I'm sure it's much more than that. So my one question is, who authorized this? Surely it wasn't the past board. And this current board couldn't have done so because you wasn't in place to authorize it. Secret society, huh?
Thank you, Ms. Hester.
What about the answer to the question?
The next speaker is Asada Olugbala.
The public remains unimpressed because they know that pomp and ceremony will not solve the day-to-day realities of 65,000 inner-city students.
I don't have any textbooks. We get like these little books, but we have to leave them at school.
I think the only class I had books in was my English 4 class.
My 2 children who are in Bienville, they have 35 kids in their class, and they have 15 books.
Sometimes if they have books, it's just a class that's just for how many of the children supposed to be in the class. Right. And then half the time they don't have enough for all the children that's in the class.
Is there any way I can get a commitment from the school board members that we're going to make sure that every child at Bienville has books?
There's a claim that some of the children in our own New Orleans schools today do not have school books. I don't know how true that is, and I can't conceive that that could possibly be true. And I can't believe that it could go on longer than one day.
Like, they probably had, say, like 3 books, a few books that people had to share.
3 books for an entire class?
Yeah.
So there'd be 6 or 7 kids around every book?
And that's not good, because people start talking, and stuff happens, fights break out.
I took 8 classes at John Mack, and I don't have no textbooks.
No textbooks. It's all in those workbook.
I can show you these books that we have. It's in my house. I kept some of them because I wasn't gonna learn anything if I kept leaving them at John Mack. So I had to sneak and take one home, and it's like a purple little book. And
so you snuck and take one home.
I snuck and took one home. Yeah.
What happens if you get caught taking one home?
I have to pay for it.
At the April 2005 school board meeting, a fed-up teachers union fills the auditorium and voices their version of reality.
We have no materials, no workbooks, no reading
Only
workbooks.
one of the 4 science classes has running water.
That more than 25 schools had no working copy machine.
We have no heat in some rooms. We have too much heat in other rooms.
Does morale exist in the New Orleans public school system? Yes. Yes, colleagues, it does. Is it positive? No.
Teachers and school staff are faced each day with students who cut class, threaten or commit violent acts against each other or adults.
They would knock on the door gently, and I'd open it a crack and just to see, because I was so used to people just barging into my room, and then a kid would just pull the door open and push his way in and walk in and take over the class. What could I do? What can you do when some 300-pound male comes in a room like that and just takes over, and he has no discipline whatsoever, and he's not going to school, and he doesn't give a damn about it?
When people feel hopeless
You know, they turn to those other things, such as drugs and all of the other things. When people feel sick, they take drugs. You know, they take medicines. You know, they do all of those things, you know, that are unhealthy, you know, to them, because without hope, there's no sense of the future. And without a sense of the future, it means I'm only living in the moment. And when I only live in the moment, anything goes.
Like I put all, look. I keep stacks, you hear me? Oh, look at that. I keep stacks, yeah.
You tripping, little boy.
You hear me?
You tripping, John. You heard me? I ain't got no money.
Oh.
You heard me? I'm getting this scoop, you heard me?
I'm not knocking the hustles out there, but I'm down, but that's not my style. It never was. I just can't do it, you know, it's getting played out. People driving like flies, you know. One kid told me, he told me, you fake if you never been in jail before. When I'm like, well, I'm fake then.
I mean, first feeling you get as a kid coming up like that is you kind of feel like, why did you get dealt this? You know, how come everybody else got mothers and fathers? How come everybody else, you know, you go over your friends' houses and you see this, and, you know, to really be in a home with like no love, like nobody holding you, none of that other stuff, it makes you a pretty cold person. Being in a gang, that was the first time I'd ever had anybody really just sit me down and say they love me. And it was a dude. It wasn't a woman, it was a man saying, look, man, you know, you my brother. We got you. And if anything happens, it's on, cuz we love you, cuz, you know, and it's gonna be all right, man. And that whole vibe, that unity of being with somebody was so attractive to me. I dug it, because I wasn't getting it at home. So a lot of times people say gangs, but gangs are like surrogate families for a lot of young men.
You know, I got my little partners. This is my family. This is what I look at every day. So they help, they show support. You know, if they didn't show support, you know, sometimes I'd be like, why would I be without them? You hear me? This is my family. I love them like brothers.
In one recent study among parents and residents, failed teaching was indicated as the #1 problem in New Orleans public schools.
A lot of people, young and old, who did not really love to teach. They were just there to get paid. Some of them were there because they couldn't get jobs doing anything else.
Let me tell you, this is what I do. I ain't never used to do homework at home. I do it probably like, say if the day was Thursday, they gave me an assignment Thursday, and it was like turning tomorrow. I come home, I'd be outside joking, I wouldn't do it. When I get to school in the morning, I'll find somebody who did it and just copy it. Because the teacher don't take their time to actually check it. They just check to see if you completed, put a stamp on it, mark your grade down. What's the point of you being inside all day, using a book to do your homework, when the teacher just gonna take a stamp and put a stamp on it and don't explain it, don't make nobody go to the board and explain it or nothing. They're just doing it to see how, to see where you at, yeah, just to see if you was gonna do it.
Sometimes I go home and look in the mirror and say, what is wrong with you? I go into lockup and I look at these children, or go into court and I look at these children and say, you have got to go to school. You have got to go to school. And I know full well, 3/4 of the time there's nothing happening at the school they're going to. They're going to be given a hard time. They're not going to receive an education. The teachers aren't going to be caring, or the teachers aren't going to be there.
They got some teachers who don't care. They just come just to get paid.
So I would not believe it by any means that there will be teachers that are just 50% of the staff that are just collecting a paycheck.
You have 50% for every 2 teachers that care. You're going to have 3 teachers that don't care. I mean, and that's just life. I mean, for some people, it's a job.
And basically, you know, as with many urban systems, if you just hung out in the back of the classroom, you came most of the time, you were quiet, didn't cause a ruckus, weren't a management problem for the teacher, you got probably a B.
Cell phone calls in the middle of the classroom, and they be on the phone about 10 minutes strong. 10 minutes, and they don't worry about teaching the class. The phone ring.
Yeah, that's true. Some people. Yeah.
The teachers do that?
Yeah,
just talk on the cell phone, and they're supposed to be at work.
I don't know why New Orleans. Well, I ain't gonna say New Orleans. Why the South? School's not, you know, as good as the West Coast or East Coast or up north. Cause you know, man, I go to Southern, and I be in class, and I just be watching like people from Virginia and stuff. Like the teacher just tell them what to do, and they'll know what to do. They'll just be Why I have to sit there and like contemplate for a little while or ask them to show me first. They was prepared better in high school. That's why I'm not they do better in life, period. That's why they don't have as much killing, because they was focusing on school. Their teachers was actually teaching them. Their teachers was like parents tell them on the slick.
Yeah, a lot of teachers, they care, but they care, but they didn't. They really didn't care. They just let us do what we wanted. They didn't really prepare us for like everyday life.
See, one time, like we was, for the summer, we was across the street by the store and we got robbed. Me, my brother, Irvin, and Brian. So, like, I had a summer job then and I had money in my pocket. So, like, he got the money. And I told my grandma, and she was like, she was glad that my brother was all right, but she was like, I wish you would have got shot. Like, your grandson, you ain't supposed to tell me nothing like that.
Like the sisters, there was two sisters. They were 19 and 21. And the 19-year-old sister, she liked me. I just stayed with them and was living a life. Like, I didn't have to do anything. Like, they had money and stuff, and they took care of me. And that was it. And that's how I got kept back my 7th grade year. Like, my first 7th grade year, that's how I messed up, like, really, because I just stopped going to school, and I just stopped caring.
I worry about a lot, I worry about my little brother, especially him. I'm gonna say the path he in ain't good, He wildin'.
Still thwarted in our quest to film inside the schools, we asked school board members and members of the community why the administration would continue to deny us access.
I wonder why.
Why don't they? Because of the horror that you would see, the absolute horror that you would experience.
I mean, kids could smuggle, no problem getting the cameras in the school. Kids could smuggle that in. They could smuggle guns and so the camera was no problem. No problem at all. Simple.
I have to build a flow down the girls' locker room. So I'm gonna be doing it today. Y'all gonna be doing y'all research down there. Whoever needs it.
Lord, she knocking a hole in us. Oh! Oh!
So tell me I ain't sexy. You can't say it.
You can't say it.
You can't say it.
Look him in the eyes and say it. Ain't no laughing.
So he not sexy?
Yeah.
Put the hair back.
Put the hair back.
Look at me in my eyes.
That smell in that little boy's room is just so, it almost makes you pass out. And this is what children have to go to the bathroom on a daily basis.
Come on, man. Get your rebound. Come on, John.
You about to freestyle?
Freeze on camera. If I ever catch a nigga saying I was class fake, I'm gonna find him like a baby in the king cake.
He not sexy.
Don't laugh. You can't laugh. You can't laugh. Why you laughing?
No, listen. Put this on.
Yeah. There you go. You would have been drove on. As a salt.
Dog. Usually give me a little. Go to your class. That was our end of that. Go to your class. You hear me? Turn the bell out. I hear that. Go to your class.
I'm trying to capture my precious high school moments, and that's how you want to be remembered.
Get on camera with this, my nigga. Oh! Yeah, I had to put that on camera. It's not on camera.
Shoot, yes it is.
It is? You want me to do else on
I'm
camera?
recording every little moment.
Come on, he wants me to kick him in his ass on camera. You got this? You ready?
Hold up.
You got it? Hold up.
There we go.
Oh, man.
It's a leap test, For me, it's it. Right now, I'm not even thinking about the test. That's how I'm going at it. When it's done, then I'm gonna dig to it. Right now, that's not even my mind, I'm chilling. I don't want to get all bunched up about it. They can go ahead and mess up, but I'm gonna pass the test, I'm gonna pass it.
Please write your answers to questions 61 through 64
and the spaces provided.
It's over with. The bad part is gone.
How did you do?
To me, I did good.
You think you did okay?
To me, you gotta have the confidence. If you just say you did it, when your heart you know you ain't doing, you know you do. You think you passed the league? Melvin, #1 basketball player.
You took the league too? Did you pass it?
Yeah, I think so, bro. I don't really know. Don't say thanks so. Say no so.
Yeah, I know so.
You passed the league?
Yeah, pace, of course.
That's the confidence you gotta have. If you don't have that confidence, you're not gonna make it, I promise. I don't know what happened. It is, you know when you messed up on something, when you know what hurt you. And this stupid test don't decide my life, but it decides like 10% of me. Some people give up, but I'm not gonna give up, but it's just really important that I pass it. Really, really, it's so important.
He has failed for the 5th time and has just one chance remaining. A lesser-known effect of poor education is the effect that it has on health. Poor education leads to increased smoking, obesity, depression, and job dissatisfaction.
A couple of days ago when I first come home from jail, I ran across a little dude I went to elementary with. He was a car salesman. You hear me? I'm talking about suit and tie. You know, car salesman, suit and tie. I was thinking like, damn, what if I would have finished school? Feel me? What if I would have went to college, you hear me? But not. I don't think it's too late, but you know, you gotta eat, you hear me? That's all. Gotta eat.
Poor education also negatively affects health by leading to increased self-destructive behavior, disregard for danger, and increased anger.
I'm like, fuck it. You know, fuck it. What's gonna happen? If I die, who's gonna miss me? You know? And when you're dealing with that kind of set of rules, you're a dangerous individual. You know what I'm saying? You don't really give a fuck. You hear these kids and I don't give a fuck. Well, they don't have nothing to give a fuck about.
I had just finished eating. What the hell, a 380? Chrome, pistol. So I'm backing up. John in shock. John, you know, Kevin is in shock because the dude got the gun in Kevin's face now. And Kevin is shaking. The dude like, give him the money, give him the money. So I take the manager, we kick the back door open, I run. We run all the way down Broad till we get to all lanes, close all lanes, and I flag down the police. The manager, the district manager, she got mad because I told her I was not giving the police none of my information. I walk home at night. I had to walk home at night. We don't know where that dude stayed. He saw our face, so no, you cannot handle that information. So I'm saying, no. Something went down, a murder happened. He was with the guys that did it, and he was arrested along with him. You know, and then he got him with first-degree murder. And he did what he did, he sold drugs. Got lost to the streets, that's all.
In developing countries, we try to identify the conditions or the causes that foster violence and instability. And we found that the lack of education is an absolutely crucial variable. And the New Orleans public school system ranks below Kenya and Zimbabwe in international education indices. You have to ask yourself, are we creating the conditions that foster violence and instability in New Orleans?
The new school board, intent on improving such conditions within the schools, sets in with high expectations and a resolve to get the job done. But these hopes are quickly dashed, and once again, divisive and divided board politics intervene and impede any progress.
When you have been on the board and have not stopped and said a word
And what we need to do is you need to do and we need to do what we've been elected to do, which is represent these children for what we are supposed to be doing. Now, I don't know what's going on in your district, but I know in my district, children are suffering. And our children need not suffer anymore. And I don't believe the state can solve it better than we can solve it. We have intelligent people, black people here who can do the job also. And so I completely disagree. And I think it's outrageous for you to assert such a thing in this environment.
My job is to do the very best I can for this district. Not for me, not for the contractors, not for the vendors. And if I think that the state can do it better, I want them to try to do it. I have been on this board now for over 4 years, fighting to try to make this thing better. That's where I've been. And you had not attended one board meeting that I know of in those 4 years. Until the people, well, wasn't very many of them, and until the people decided that they wanted to get rid of other people on the board, you didn't have an interest in it. I'm sorry.
And once more, the struggle for power will spill over and again pit the board against the superintendent. April 2005. Despite the passage of Act 193 and Amato's complete control of his administration, the problems are too big to surmount in a few short months. The school system is unable to produce a reconciled budget. It has not done so for 5 years.
You don't even know how much money you have right now. Millions of dollars been thrown around numbers. You can't even get a clean audit.
State Auditor Steve Terrio steps in to investigate the finances and finds that over $70 million in federal funding is unaccounted for. Financially, the system is a grand mess.
They don't have the skill sets to do it. To give you an example, the accounting department doesn't have one accountant. The accounting department doesn't have one accountant. The accounting department doesn't have one accountant.
You shouldn't be spending anything on Project Nobody, but how are we going to figure out how much money we have? Project, how are we going to figure out how much money we have? I'm going to write a nice, pretty brochure, put some black children on it, and present it to you at the next board meeting. Project, how are we going to figure out how much money we have? And then what we going to do with it?
Now, after having been involved in the system for a little over a year, there's no way the school district can tell their expenditures to date, more or less 5 years from now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The state threatens to take over if the New Orleans School Board does not consent to have an independent accounting firm come in to straighten out the books. Amato and others propose to bring in Deloitte & Touche, a Connecticut, Texas-based firm, to do the job, thereby passing over Bruno and Turvalon and other politically connected in-state accounting firms. And shortly after this,
on the point of the proposal by Deloitte & Touche that's been presented today, it is offensive that it is being proposed that people in the state of Louisiana cannot conduct the business. We have very successful businesses in this state. There are many accounting firms, there are many human resource firms, and there are many technology firms that have the capacity to get this district and to assist you board members who have not been given an adequate chance in 3 months to assist and get this district where it needs to go. It's been very difficult to watch since last year after we believe that we took a first step in the right direction with some legislation to change things. It was an attempt to hire a CEO and superintendent that had the appropriate skill set, the appropriate character, and acted in good faith. Unfortunately, I have to stand before you at this time and let you know that I'm not sure if that has happened. What you have is someone that might not have fit the mold as I just described it.
We've been saying that he has not done his job, but yet we have not addressed that. We have not said that done a comprehensive evaluation on his performance. No, I got to go back. We have done a comprehensive evaluation on his performance, and it is absolutely unsatisfactory. I think that your resolution should address if we're going to hire a contractor or a third party to come in and do his job, then your resolution should suggest that we don't need his services.
Somehow, in the course of 3 short months, Amato has fallen from savior to scapegoat. And the next day,
Board leadership and I met this afternoon to discuss a mutually agreeable separation from the district effective June 30th, 2005. At this point in time, I am convinced that the action I have taken is not only best for me and my family, it is in the best interest of the children that I came here to serve.
the 7th superintendent in less than 10 years. Once again, any sense of stability or continuity is lost. The system is left in chaos. The Associated Press calls New Orleans, quote, murderer's row for superintendents, end quote.
Well, the timing was exactly right. In other words, I guess people just felt if they couldn't stop 193 at the state legislative level, that the other way would be then to just get rid of me, because then that obviates 193.
In answer to your question, yes, it was motivated by 193. And then, because 193 allowed him to bring in Deloitte and Touche, right? Okay.
He did sell us a bill of goods, and we bought into it, only to find out he was the worst thing that could have ever happened to the school district.
Now, why do you think he was the worst thing that happened to this?
Well, because he was a liar. He was a phony person.
We didn't feel as though we were properly informed on many issues.
There were people in the business community, in the white upper business community, who told him he didn't have to listen to the board. He could do anything he wanted to do, which was a detriment to the predominantly African American population that went to the schools in this district.
With the model gone and the new school board disintegrating into its old, dysfunctional, and divided ways, a frustrated community asks themselves, how did we get here? How did the adults in our community allow our schools, our lifeline to our children, to our future, come to this? Some would say that the answer lies in our history, a history of slavery and racism and, quote, Southern values, end quote. They would note that it was not until 16 years after Brown versus Board of Education that the New Orleans public school system was finally forced to integrate. 16 years after the Supreme Court ordered it.
When we have so many private schools that have a white population and the public schools have a black population, it becomes blazingly clear, radiantly clear, crystal clear that there's a racial issue there. I think that it has been a conscious decision to undereducate this populace so that for instance, so that the tourism industry would always have a pool of people to pull from in order to fix bids, to be housekeepers, to work at minimum wage.
Education was designed in this country to educate, homogenize and educate a workforce to go into the factories. Well, we no longer have the factories. The need to homogenize is not so great, but we still need an undereducated workforce to work in McDonald's or to work in hotels or to do the sort of things that you don't really need an education for.
Those who favor historical reasons for the current conditions would also point out that white flight began directly after this forced integration. Whites fled to private schools into the suburbs, and confidence in the public schools began to erode soon thereafter.
They all went to Metairie. Now they're going to St. Tammany. You know what? You can only run so far.
In the 1970s, 40 new private schools were built in just 2 years in Louisiana for the sole purpose of, quote, keeping blacks out, end quote. Soon after this, crime in New Orleans began to rise, and more whites left, and the cycle was started. By 2005, 97% of the students of the New Orleans public schools were African American. Some would say that these historic reasons are responsible for the current conditions. But others, those more politically attuned, would say that we allowed our schools to reach their deplorable state because of a political struggle, a struggle largely divided along race-class lines. the wealthy trying to improve the schools in order to entice new businesses to move to Louisiana, thus spurring economic development, and also benefiting themselves by increasing the value of their land and business assets, increasing their personal wealth and power, not so much motivated by education as by self-enrichment. While leaders of the largely African-American lower and middle classes try to hold on to their one trump card, political power, the votes of a city that is nearly 70% black, thus affording them control of their public plum, the $500 million annual school budget. Their goal is often to line the pockets of black businessmen, competent or not, doing business with the school system. Again, not so much interested in education as in self-enrichment.
I understand the statement, and I understand the basis of the statement. And I understand the camp, the culture that allows that statement to be made. But once and for all, it's time for it to be over. Shame on them. Shame on them for even thinking that it's about green and not the children. Shame on them.
The issue of why some of these people get involved has nothing to do except those contracts and that money. And that is almost appalling and insulting, but it is the truth. People want control over that money.
This ain't got nothing to do with no poor, ignorant black children. It's got to do with a money grab. That's all it's about, money, honey.
And then there are some who would say that the root cause of the problem lies in the African-American community itself.
We're at a cultural deficit right now, and this thing is going down faster than we can imagine. I believe we're resilient. I believe human nature is to not accept this. But I think that the problems we see right now is the first time you've ever had a class of people who are in the lower class, you know, economically and for his education, and feel okay about it and listen to songs that say it's cool. Never before has that ever happened in the history of the world. You would never go to the Hebrews and hear them singing songs about, yeah, we slaves and it's cool. You know, but you got guys saying, yeah, we in the projects, yeah, this is the streets, man, this is my thing. I like to kill people.
They would say that the root of the problem lies in the habits of a poor, disenfranchised segment of our population that just does not value education.
You imagine yourself as a poor kid in a horrible school that has bad habits all the way around. Teachers don't believe the students can learn. Teachers don't expect much from the students. Students don't expect much from themselves. One of the habits that they can't develop correctly is the anticipation of school, that is formal education at the college level, as a means to, you know, get out of the ghetto and a means to do better. For many people, and I talk to many of these kids who are poor or black, they don't see education as the way out. They've not been told that college is a means to help them become upwardly mobile. In fact, many of their parents have not had the opportunity to go to college. And if you've got parents who haven't gone to college, it's not that they don't have a desire for their kids to go, it's just that they don't know the proper things to do. And so their worldviews are shaped by the limits of the world in which they live. That's a good thing in some instances, it's a horrible thing in others.
His mother tell him, oh, you ain't gonna be shit. If your mama tell you the person you look up to, the person you love to, you ain't gonna be nothing, then you gonna feel like, oh, I ain't gonna be nothing.
The mother, once again, does not have ownership of anything that she would consider valued. They don't own their own home. They don't own ownership of something that they can cling on to, so they tend to hold on to their children.
The astounding piece that we're faced with is that 70%, and I didn't want to believe this, 70% of our African American children are in single-parent homes, primarily raised by females who are having to work 2 jobs to meet their needs. 70%.
So you get a confused young man when he's raised just by his mother. And in our society, in part of certain communities, success is not measured by education. What they want to have is that person, that child with them for a long period of time.
I know a lot of people in my generation, this is one of the first things we say. We don't want to raise our children like you know, our parents raised up, and it was like we lost values and principles, and, you know, it's kind of something hard to put your finger on. It was like, okay, if I meet a young lady tonight, I just want to go out and have a good time, and, you know, if she gets pregnant, okay, that's your responsibility. You know, so I think it's some values that were lost somewhere, you know. It's not a family-oriented thing anymore. And remember I was telling you about the cycle thing? It looks like that has just kind of continued.
90% of the children that I deal with on every given day cannot put their hands on their legal guardians.
On May 17, 2004, Bill Cosby, in a speech to the NAACP, lights into the black community.
Where were you when he was 2? Where were you when he was 12? Where were you when he was 18? And how come you don't know he had a pistol? Brown versus the Board of Education is no longer the white person's problem. We've got to take the neighborhood back. We've got to go in there. It's right around the corner. It's standing on the corner. It can't speak English. It doesn't want to speak English. I can't even talk the way these people talk. Why you ain't where you is, go where?
Niggas rocking and that's sick, you hear me? And as our niggas rocking.
And that fool, you heard me?
I was that fool, you dig?
I don't know who these people are. And I blamed the kid until I heard the mother talk. What the hell good is Brown versus the Board of Education if nobody wants it?
In response, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, professor of humanities at the University of Pennsylvania, publishes a book entitled Is Cosby Right?, in which he attacks Cosby, portraying him as being frustrated and lacking in compassion.
It's very difficult for me to simply say, yeah, those are some bad habits that only poor people have. They are some bad habits, but the question is, where did they come from? How did they get put there? And how do people figure out how to break the cycle of bad habits? I'm abhorred by and outraged by rich people, upper middle class people, and solidly wealthy people who tend to look down their noses at the poor, figuring that they should be like them, not realizing that it's different to drive a Mercedes every day than it is to get a bus or to catch a cab or to catch 3 trains to get to work and then make a minimum wage. You know, when I go to the airport and the people who cart you around are making $4 and $5 an hour, which means they're making $40 a day. And people hardly tip them and take them for granted. You know, the people who are the workers of society barely get noticed, are not acknowledged, and furthermore, have a much tougher time than the wealthy. So for me in my book, I'm trying to defend the poor by saying, I'm not trying to uncritically celebrate them and say everything they do is fine. I am suggesting, however, that if we take a harder look at the lives they live, we'd be much more compassionate, number one. And number two, we'd see that if we were living under the same conditions, we might not be faring as well as they are. I mean, the lives of heroism that many of these people live is just remarkable.
I guess it was Wednesday night, we were getting reports over on the Page Street that gangs were coming through. They were kicking in doors. We could hear gunfire.
Going down to that convention center was horrible. There were people screaming for help. We go down and you go in this place and you can smell a gun smoke. And you're kicking around casings on the ground. There are people in a fetal position, just cowering because you know it just went down here somewhere. And you're waiting for somebody just to tell you. Just tell me who.
About 10 minutes later, a lady came down and said that's sad how they killed the lady and raped her and threw over the banister. And we went down there and we looked, and it was the white lady who talked with us the night before, and she was raped and killed. They raped her and threw her over the ramp.
People walking for their lives, you know what I mean? You got 5 guys with guns and jack them up and take everything that they own. Going into people's homes, and looting and destroying a place, for what? And I'm not talking about 2 looters in there doing it. I'm talking about 200 looters inside doing it, And this is somebody's business or somebody's home. They have destroyed it. Why do you got to take the guy's sofa? Why do you got to crap on his countertop?
I was at the convention center, but I was afraid to go inside. I was down the street from the convention center. I would never get that close to it. I was right by the parking lot. by the big parking lot, by the Riverwalk. I was afraid to go there. I was scared to go inside. They was killing up people, raping each other. They actually killed these people and put them on the second floor. They stampeding them on purpose.
I see two guys swinging a body into the back. That was the first one we seen at the convention center. It's dark at night. There's no lights, and there is no protection, and the things that were going on you couldn't see.
You were in the dome?
Yeah.
What happened?
Man is getting murdered, rapists out there killing people, maniacs. You know what I'm saying? It's wrong, man. It's just pitiful out there, man. Ain't no lights in there. No lights at all in there. Ain't no lights at all in the Superdome. Kids gotta go to bed and they wait till the kids go to bed and they go in there and rape. Man, their bed is getting raped in the Superdome.
I want to tell you, it is worse than anything that I could have ever imagined. I have been to downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I've been in Johannesburg. I've been in South Africa. I've been in Cuba. I've been all over the world. I've not seen anything like what I saw in New Orleans.
Now get off your asses and let's do something. And let's fix the biggest goddamn crisis in the history of this country.
I told you earlier today I didn't think this had turned out to be Armageddon. I was wrong.
Around the world, violence and instability are the result of three interrelated factors: motive, means, and opportunity. Let's look at the context of New Orleans. Are these factors present? Think of motive. You have a disenfranchised, impoverished population where only 40% of the people can read. You have St. Charles on one hand and the Ninth Ward on the other. The income disparity alone is a motive. Means. When we say means, we mean tools for violence. Are there tools that can foster violence in New Orleans? The New Orleans public school system has guns in it. Make no mistake about it, the means for violence are present. So what that takes an opportunity. When you have motive and means, all it takes is an opportunity to bring them together. For New Orleans, Katrina was that opportunity. You'd think we'd learn from the riots in 1992 in LA or other events in American history. What happens when motive, means, and opportunities come together? Until we break the links between them, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have more violence.
So, some would say that the reasons for the educational failure in New Orleans are historical. Some that the reasons are political, divided along race-class lines. Some that the reasons lie in the culture and values of the impoverished black community. And then there are some who would say that the reason our schools and our city is the way it is are spiritual. Not religious necessarily, but spiritual.
Is it spiritual? Yeah, of course. I think everything is. I mean, I think the spiritual is the root of everything that manifests itself externally. And so are things, if things are really bad externally, is it a reflection on us spiritually? Yes. Yes.
Somehow, they would say, we have allowed a system of values to develop that brings out too much self-interest and greed and lust for power. Too big of a gap between rich and poor. A system that allows too little time for caring and connection and personal character. We have allowed this to become a reality in New Orleans and in America.
So the official American values are supposed to be something like gain wealth forgetting all but self, or, a belief in a commitment to a market system with entrepreneurial initiative and consumer choice and so on. And if you don't make out, too bad.
The core of America is not meant to care. We as human beings here care about each other, but the core of this country is not based on caring. It's based on basically being opportunistic.
I should care and do care whether the kid across the street has a chance for a decent education. And that's just minimal civilized values that translates into a public education system.
Why should you care if the kid next door to you gets a good education?
Because I'm a human being. And fundamental properties of human beings are sympathy, solidarity, support for others, and so on. It takes tremendous propaganda efforts to drive that out of people's minds.
It takes us understanding that we are all human beings and we share this planet together. This is not we're a global society now. what happens to me can affect you, as opposed to 20 or 30 years ago, what affected me only affected me. We are our brother's keepers, whether we like it or not.
If I was talking to all the kids of New Orleans in schools, I would say never give up. There was an old black preacher, wise philosopher named Howard Thurman, who said, refuse the temptation to limit your dreams to what you're facing now. What you're facing now will not exhaust your life.
I would say that it was the children of the 60s that made a difference in the civil rights issues in this United States. It was the children of South Africa that really made a difference in apartheid in South Africa. So it will also be the children of Louisiana crying out, speaking out, that will make a difference in how education is funded. So I say cry out, cry loud and spare not.
I don't care if it's Donald Trump, I don't care if it's Russell Simmons, I don't care if it's an athlete. The only people that are successful work their fucking asses off to the point that it doesn't even seem, it's not realistic. You know, it's just like you've never seen it. But if you want an ordinary life, then you use ordinary effort. If you want an extraordinary life, you have to use extraordinary effort.
During the filming of our project, we came upon numerous heroes who contributed selflessly to the betterment of the children of the New Orleans public school system, selflessly to the city of New Orleans. These are some of those who inspired us. These heroes who gave so selflessly have given flight to one more set of heroes, one set of heroes who, against all odds, prevailed. One hero in particular graduated and went on to join the Marines.
First two weeks, I was like, what I got into, I'm gonna go home, say, Mandy, come get me. But it's like a privilege for me to go do what I can for my people.
Another was relocated by Katrina to Eugene, Oregon to finish his senior year.
It's different. Not what I'm used to. People, the class sizes, the education period, like it's like a better education than my old school. Like a super better education than my old school. That's all I can say, it's just different. Like, they think I'm super cool, like, and like everything I do, they be trying to copy and stuff. Like the way I talk and like what I be wearing. They dress like all right, but I can't wear them clothes. They like, man. I know if I go back to New Orleans dressed like that, I know I should just get rid of the fight because I know everybody's gonna mess with me. And they Chinese food tastes nasty. They got corn and vegetables and stuff up in there. And it be, ugh, nasty.
And finally, one last hero. One last hero who had his senior year interrupted by being held up at gunpoint while working at a fast food counter. Interrupted by being shot 5 times while waiting for a friend in front of his house. Interrupted by having his one surviving brother arrested for first-degree murder. Interrupted by failing the LEAP test in his senior year. His senior year was interrupted, but not derailed. Somehow, he was able to find the strength to face the world one more time, to face failure one more time, to face the LEAP test just one more time. And this time, he triumphed.
Mario Pleasant.
Mario Pleasant, very handsome. I don't talk much. John Mack. Much love.
In some portions of Africa, when they greet you, they don't ask you how you're doing. They say, how are the children? Because if they know that the children are okay, then you must be okay also.